things brassica. It's really interesting. Hello and welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. We're racing a little bit of a rainstorm and I have a lot to update you on in the greenhouse. Because that is covered, I think we will go there last. So maybe when the rain hits, we'll already be under cover. The perennial space is still just as wild and crazy as it has been. We're seeing a lot more passion flowers than previously because the passion flower really is starting to vine out. I know it's kind of hard to see what's passion flower and what's not in here because there's tomatoes, there's birdhouse gourd, there's actually some bindweed in here. But the passion flower is finding its way through, and I don't know if any of these have actually gotten properly pollinated yet. Passion flower is not self-fertile as far as I understand. You need genetically different pollen to come and pollinate a flower in order to get the little fruits, the maypops. And I do have different passion flowers around the property, but I don't know that the bees are necessarily making it from the pond where the other passion flower is down over here to help pollinate, but time will tell. Under here, the archway is starting to lean, as it sometimes does, especially if I have a plant really kind of established on this side and the heavier fruits established on this side. It really starts to weigh things down that way. It's not doing too bad right now. Honestly, the beds that are right here and probably this archway is going to get a revamp, but not until this winter because it's really hard to work around these plants. We've got even more birdhouse gourds coming all around, and the ones that are here are absolutely gigantic and undoubtedly super heavy. My roses are on a third, maybe even fourth flush. They smell amazing. The passion flower does too. They actually kind of remind me of the rose in their smell. Our blackberries are pretty much done for the season. I've got a lot of pokeweed in here that's sort of overshadowing them, but the blackberries will be okay. And check out what the pumpkins are doing. They're taking over the side yard, which is exactly what I hoped for. There's two pumpkins that we can see right here. There's one underneath that grape right there, and then there's one in a bed right here spilling out over the side. And as you can see, they're trailing quite well, and we do have some pumpkins starting. This is just one of many, and the vines themselves are actually trailing along the ground, which is good because wherever the vine is touching the ground, it's going to reroot, which serves two purposes. It actually will help give the vine all the moisture that it needs, but it also will help it take up extra nutrition. So if something happens to a different part of the vine, there's more support for the plant throughout different parts of the vine. I think that's pretty cool. These are the Dutch fork pie pumpkins, which seem incredibly resistant to not only disease, but insects, which is really important. We deal with squash bugs and squash vine borers. There was a bigger pumpkin over here. It's hiding underneath this vine right here. Can you see it? They'll be a lot easier to find when they turn that tan orange like they do. There are going to be a lot of them, and this makes me so happy. The melons that I had up on trellises behind this pumpkin here really did not like all the rain that we got the past couple of weeks. The melons that were touching the ground quickly split and got ants in them. This guy looks like it may have also succumbed, possibly to a possum or something else. Something looks like it went after that. So it doesn't look like we're gonna get any melons off of these three plants here, but I do have some more melons growing in the greenhouse, so all is not lost. I am officially done collecting the elderberry that I'm going to this year because they pretty much petered out. A lot of the white flowers that you see, that is from the pokeweed. The asparagus is wild and crazy, which is what we want this time of year. And our muscadine grapes are doing fabulously. They are nice and big. They're not ripe yet. They need to be a bronzy color, but they're getting to be of the proper size. This here is not a grape. These are the cherry tomatoes that volunteer here like crazy. The yellow currant tomato, these are so darn good. We first got the seeds from M.I. Gardner. I planted them once, I think it was either 2020 or 2021. And now we have literally hundreds of plants around the whole homestead every year. So it's a good thing they're delicious. Y'all don't get mad at me, I haven't weeded this yet, and I actually have kind of given up on harvesting the cinnamon basil. I've left this to the pollinators, which they're going to love, and because we're allowing this to flower and seed, I'm sure we will see some more cinnamon basil here next year in the form of volunteers. I did actually purchase some hardwood bark mulch to help me mulch this perennial space. Part of the reason that this is so crazy this year is I tried to use stuff from my farm to garden this year, more than I've purchased in. I've been purchasing a lot in every year. The problem is that the hay that I used to mulch, I knew that it would seed some and it would be easier to pull out. Problem is it seeded quite a lot, and with all the rain that we got this summer, it took off like crazy and wasn't the easiest thing to weed out. So what I'm going to do is in this space, I'm going to put hardwood bark mulch down. This is what I have used in years past. I don't love it in areas where I'm going to have super small tender seedlings because the roly-polies will absolutely mow through my tiny seedlings and the wood attracts the roly-polies. But in a space like this where I just have basically established plants, that's probably the best call. I have the mulch, I just haven't weeded and put it out yet because we keep getting rain and I keep needing to preserve things. Thus is the busy season, am I right? I have started harvesting from the Sunbelt grapes. I think I stood right here a couple days ago and didn't move very far and harvested about 8 cups worth of grapes. We can see them here starting to turn. There's some that are green still, there's some that are a little bit more red, and some that are like a deep dark, almost bluish purple. It's these bluish purple ones that are ripe, and they're so darn good. They taste exactly like Welch's grape juice. The skin is a little bit thicker, but honestly, that's probably good because of all the rain that we've gotten. We don't have really much splitting of the grapes at all, and it helps them be bird resistant. The muscadines are the same way. The skin is a little bit thicker. They are seeded, but there's not like an overwhelming amount of seeds in them. They're delicious, and they're delicious enough where the thicker skin and the seed, it eventually just doesn't matter. It becomes something that you don't even notice because they're so good. And we've got lots of them. So we have a lot of jelly on the horizon. I think today was supposed to be weed whacking day of the garden, but if it's gonna rain, my husband might not get to come out till tomorrow. Here's the third pumpkin that we have jutting out this way. And there's a couple baby pumpkins right on the end here. Here on this side of the garden, we have some different color of volunteer cherry tomatoes. Last year was the first year that I saw that our yellow currant cherry tomato likely crossed with either a sweet million or a super sweet 100 tomato, and it created this little guy, which I have called the red yellow currant hyphenated. I call it that because it's obviously red, but it actually tastes remarkably like that yellow currant tomato. There's a very distinct, like fruity but very umami flavor to the tomato. So good. This is the second generation of that here, and it has retained that lovely flavor, which is great. Something I forget to keep showing you is this volunteer birdhouse court. There's actually several of them here. This is where my kids were having a grand old time this spring, making all kinds of things out of birdhouse gourds from a few years ago. We got some volunteer plants and they have started to grow. I got a really good picture of these flowers open last night, so I'll go ahead and put that in here. They open in the evening time and actually attract a moth for pollinating. We do have a couple little birdhouse gourds here. So that is super fun, and I think it's gorgeous. There's actually some more birdhouse gourd volunteering in the lawn over here by the kids' garden, so hopefully we can train one of these up and around their archway. They've started to do a little bit of amending of their garden beds that we just harvested out of. Molly's sweet corn came out of there and Bentley's potatoes came out of here. They need to do a little bit more amending before we can plant something else. The peanuts are a long season crop and they're still doing their thing. Their flowers are gorgeous and the plants look really healthy too. Shika's popcorn has had some pest pressure. We think that this is from birds. It's possible it could be from mice and rats, but we've seen a lot of birds in and out of here, so we may need to actually like net this corn patch for him to get very much. We have done things like scarecrows and we find that the birds are pretty smart and there's really not much that scares them. We found things like scarecrows to work well for hawks, but not like the little birds. It's like the little birds don't have any fear. They've replanted some golden watermelon at the trellis here. And still, I think the large crop of the kids' garden right now happens to be peppers. Their peppers are doing incredibly well, and they are growing a lot of them. You saw that we had some bigger, blockier peppers over there, and then they've got snacking peppers down here. There are still a few tomatoes hanging on in their garden, and some cucumbers, if they can just get ahead of the cucumber beetles. See them? They've been the pest of the year for sure. Most of what's growing out here on the lane is past its peak. The stuff that looks the best is right here in the front. The sweet potatoes are really loving life. They've been loving all of the rain that we've gotten. They have really put out a lot of greens. And it's been fun having these square trellises here and guiding the greens upward. This is doing exactly what I hoped for, which is allowing the plants to have a decent amount of foliage without necessarily taking over a lot of the walkway. What I've been doing is just coming around and guiding them around. They don't naturally vine, but you can definitely guide them upward and sort of train them to grow upward. We will come to this side to look at the peppers because the wind happens to be blowing from this side, and you can see a lot of the red pimentos in here that need harvesting. I don't think I've harvested any pimentos yet, but I have been harvesting quite a few of the Edgevarskis as they turn red. And of course they're putting on successions of blooms and successions of fruit, as peppers like to do. So we're barely just starting to harvest peppers, and we'll be able to harvest from this all season long. The rest of the lane is really slotted to come out relatively soon. Most of this stuff has gone by the wayside. You can see my spaghetti squash is definitely dead. This is the second spaghetti squash that I put in, and it got really ravaged by the cucumber beetles, and you know what, it might be trying to come out of it, so I've just left it here, and it can be here if it would like to be, and produce if it would like to produce. But for the most part, these are done, and the squash that are left on really just need to come off. The tromboncino is very much the same way. I actually just recently harvested a lot of the tromboncino, but it did put on a second round of fruits, which I thought I was gonna harvest green, and then I never did. I mean, you can really harvest them any time, but at this point, they're definitely of mature size, and they're starting to toughen the rind, and so I'm just gonna let them mature. This way they'll be more like a butternut and less like a zucchini. Both are fine with me. I think the squash that is doing the best right now is the Autumn Frost hybrid. Now these guys aren't without their problems right now, but they look the best out of all of the squash. Got some nice deep green leaves here. There are some parts of the plant that are a little bit more sick, but they're still putting on little fruits. This one is ripe, and that one is on its way. There's actually quite a few little baby pumpkins out here, and we have made an initial harvest off of these as well. I do have some Armenian cucumbers out here where I really wasn't sure were going to survive the onslaught of cucumber beetles. They're still here. I have been coming through and torching them probably about every other day, but you can see the damage that they're doing. This is all cucumber beetle damage. And they don't only damage the leaves, they can damage the stem as well and transmit disease. So I'm not really sure how well these plants are gonna do, but we're gonna leave them for now. Probably by the next time you see the garden, these Kentucky Wonder pole beans will be totally out, and so will the tomatoes. My tomatoes have definitely gone by. There's a lot of disease. There's only a couple plants that don't have just a ton of disease, but we'll probably pull them out as well. I've got bush beans underneath all of the tomatoes, so there's something in their place right now, which is great, and we have started harvesting off of these. These are the Kalima bush beans. The tomatoes really have been suffering with all the rain that we've gotten, not only with the disease pressure, but with cracking. That is what this is from. Look at that. So this one's probably chicken food or pig food. So I think I've pretty much harvested all the tomatoes as far as the slicers go that I'm going to harvest. And that's good. I got way more preserved than I thought that I would. It's strange to basically be done with tomatoes at the beginning of August, but it is what it is. I have what I need, and I've got all kinds of cherry tomatoes for fresh eating, so I don't really feel like I'm missing out. And as mentioned, when these come out, I've got bush beans down there, and then I do have a plan for out here when the bush beans are done. When those are done, I already have some seeds started for the Green Magic hybrid broccoli. That broccoli loves to produce in our area. It doesn't care if it's hot, it doesn't care if it's cold, it doesn't care if it's been hot and it gets cold, it doesn't care if it's been cold and it gets super hot. That variety is such a powerhouse. I love it. And so I have 30 different plants started to set out here. In about a month's time, they could be where they are in my shed for up to 2 months if I feel like I need the extra time out here to do some amending and things, but that's the plan. I've already got my fall plan going, so I'm not super attached to trying to bring these guys out of their sickness. They're done. And so really with the tomatoes and then the green beans and then the broccoli, we'll get 3 crops out of these beds this year, which is incredible if you think about it. The Kentucky Wonder pole beans are still producing, but they're getting a little bit tough and stringy, and so it's just time. These poor things, I have limped them along all season, and it's just time to get the final harvest and to pull them out. Hi sir, how are you? He said, you got my camera, that means you owe me a treat. Yes, we'll get you one. Now right now we gotta go in the greenhouse. You coming? Okay. Nope. Going to the house. I'm going in the greenhouse. Poor baby. He'll figure it out. Now this is where the most change has happened lately. My family loves to eat all things brassica, and that's why we got this greenhouse, so that we could cushion our brassica plants a little bit to hopefully get 2 brassica harvests in one season. So we get a spring season and a fall season, and I've pretty much mastered the spring season, I think, and I'm working on figuring out the timing for the fall season. What I'd really love to do is get all of the brassicas harvested by about Thanksgiving time, but definitely by Christmas, because by then we're officially at the shortest day length. We have the coldest days then. And a lot of plants, if they're not harvested, they're really not trying to produce. They're just sort of going dormant at that time of year, and they'll pick up growing in the springtime, but really that's when I'd like to get my spring brassicas going. So if I can time it right, I can get the 2 crops. If I don't, I have a little bit of a struggle, so I'm still trying to perfect that. And I got some advice from a local Amish lady that told me I need to get my starts for my brassicas out by July if I want to harvest them by Thanksgiving. And so here they are. And as you can see here, I have mulched. I did not do a ton of mulching in this area this year. I actually didn't do any new mulching. If I mulched at all, what I did was take the mulch, the old mulch off of the beds, amend underneath, and then put the old mulch back on. But that mulch was starting to really break down, and I'm wondering if that's not one of the reasons that we're seeing more beetle pressure this year. I did a little bit of research on how to keep beetles away from my plants, and one of the highest suggestions is to mulch, because their larvae have a hard time crawling around on the surface of the mulch. They can crawl around on the surface of the soil pretty well, but the mulch kind of hangs them up. And so I'm thinking that that might be why I'm actually seeing a lot more cucumber beetles than I normally do. It's the lack of mulching. And in the years past, I have not wanted to mulch with straw mulch, partially because any straw mulch that I was finding that was like sourced locally had been sprayed with herbicides, and I obviously don't want to put that in my garden. So I did actually buy some bagged mulch. You can see it back here. This stuff is safe for the garden, and I got this at Rural King. And it has guar gum as an ingredient on it, which is, you know, a food additive, but it's a little bit tacky, and that helps hold this down in the higher winds. When we have super high winds, I do close down the sides of the greenhouse, and so in theory the mulch, no matter what, should stay in place. We'll see. This is my first time using straw mulch ever, believe it or not. Mostly I have used hardwood bark mulch, but we are trying to keep the roly-polies at bay. So let's get to talking about what's actually in here. You'll see there's not a lot of mulch on this bed. I did sprinkle a tiny bit down, but I actually sowed some carrots here a few days ago. I don't know if I'm seeing any germination right now. I wouldn't really expect it at this point, but in about 5 or 7 days, I should be starting to see the little carrot seedlings popping up. And I didn't want to cover them with the mulch, but you know, a little bit down is fine for helping to retain moisture. This soil does pretty well retaining moisture moisture anyway. These are the other melons that it has, so I wasn't super worried about the melons in the perennial garden. The watering is a lot more controlled in here because we don't necessarily have to worry about rainfall oversaturating our beds in here. I do have a measure of seepage that comes in and does get soaked up by the beds, but because the beds are elevated, a lot of that moisture stays pretty far down, and so there's still quite a lot of draining happening. So these melons are doing pretty all right. They have had a few cucumber beetles, but they look better than the Armenians that are out on the lane, so there is that. However, speaking of Armenians, these two plants I planted from the same seed packet, and this seed packet was from seed that I saved in 2021, I believe, and it was from my armpit melon. My armpit melon is a cross that we accidentally created here that year, and it was delicious. It was a cross between a Charente melon, which is like a cantaloupe, a small cantaloupe type variety, and a Kajari melon, which looks like this. A lot of you may have seen Kajaris before. Just like that little cherry tomato that volunteers around here, that particular melon, it had a sweetness to it, but it had also a really awesome umami flavor that honestly reminded me of a tomato. It absolutely was a melon and tasted like a melon, but it had this savory aspect to it that was so darn good. And I'm talking about the armpit melon in past tense because I have tried to plant it this year several times and I have not seen it from the same seed. So what happened was that seed packet that I have from seed that I saved, all of that seed came from one melon. The thing is that each individual seed doesn't necessarily have the same genetic material on it. There's a lot of different pollens that could have contributed, and the first couple years that I grew armpit melons and got armpit melons was kind of a fluke. Because this year, from that same seed, I'm getting a lot that look just like a Kajari, and then there's some that kind of look like an Armenian white cucumber. And an Armenian white cucumber is technically a melon, so it's very likely that they crossed. I had a melon growing in the kids' garden that kind of had this oblong shape. It sort of looked like a Kajari melon. It tasted awful. I'm gonna guess that that's what this is. So I'm a little bit sad. I'm still gonna leave it here and let it do its thing so we can see, but no armpits this year, I don't think. One thing that I have a lot of in here are Brussels sprouts. This is a 8-foot bed here, and there are 5 Brussels sprout plants. They are tiny now, but these guys are about 8 weeks old. These are some of that Green Magic hybrid broccoli. Some more Brussels sprouts here, and then these are cabbages. I only have one plant that was a little bit sad about being transplanted, and I don't know if this guy is gonna make it, but the rest of them look really good. There's more Brussels sprouts here. And then up here I have some kales, as well as a couple of sweet potatoes that I had extras of and nowhere to really put. So I stuck them in the edge of this bed here, thinking that the greens could spill over and that would be nice. I think this is a pretty cool illustration if it's gonna come up on camera. I think it will, but you can see the older leaves here are closer to the bottom. They're a little bit lighter in color, and the newer leaves are darker. This is because they were running out of nutrition in the little start pots that I had the slips in, and so this yellowing, this bleaching out was really a sign that they needed some more nutrition, and this green means that they are now getting some more nutrition. A lot of times with plants, you're not necessarily going to heal the damaged leaves or the leaves that are lacking, but the new growth should show an improvement, and we can see that there. I walked right past this without talking about it again. This squash plant, there's actually I think 4 of them here. This is the mashed potato squash. This is also a hybrid variety. This is my first year growing it, and they're adorable. I really don't know what to expect out of them, except to hear that it's like a low carb mashed potato. Our family, we don't really necessarily shoot for low carb at all in our meals, but it seemed really interesting and a fun way to get our kids to eat more vegetables. These plants have been very healthy. There have been squash bugs on them, but I've been picking them off and picking their eggs off. Even when we've had our heat waves, these guys haven't drooped their leaves at all. They've been great. The Malabar spinach, of course, just as lovely as always. It's been putting out its little flowers, which I think that some of these have gotten pollinated now, but we don't have any mature seeds on here yet. These will turn a nice deep dark purple when the seeds come, and that will be very soon. Over on this trellis, I have another volunteer plant. This is a volunteer cucamelon that I wasn't sure was going to live because of beetle pressure, but I think it's safe to say that it has found its roots and is persevering through all of that. I have barely started to harvest cucamelons. This is like the second or third one that I've gotten. I'm actually really happy to see this here because my cucumbers haven't been doing very well. And these taste just like a little cucumber. Looky there. And they're awesome fermented. These beans down here are looking absolutely lovely. We've been harvesting out of here as well. This is also a volunteer plant. This is one plant, one tomato. It's growing out of the weed fabric on the side here and has absolutely taken over the trellis. There's a lot of fruit up high, actually. I probably need to get a bucket so I can get up there and grab it. But this is the blue cream berry. It's a Wild Boar Farms variety. I was real happy to see this because it was different than the yellow currant tomato that we see volunteering all the time. Even though this is a yellow tomato too, it has a very different flavor. This is a lot more classic yellow tomato in the flavor, a nice brightness with like a tiny bit of acid and not just a ton of umami. That other tomato has a ton of umami. So there's a brightness here that is a nice little change. More Brussels sprouts at the base of these plants here. More Brussels sprouts here. I am going to be putting some peas on this trellis, and that might be a reason for me to take this out if I really think it's that unappetizing melon, is that I can put something that I will actually eat, and I can put peas on both sides. So if I do that, that will be in the next couple of weeks. Down here are more cabbages. I am a little bit worried about cabbage loopers taking over these little baby seedlings at this time of year. We've seen a little bit of damage from harlequin bugs and just the tiniest bit from cabbage loopers. These guys have only been in here about a week at this point, and I'm planning on spraying them weekly with BT to help keep those bugs at bay. Now the beetles and things I'm just picking off as I see them. I'm really not seeing a whole lot, which, knock on wood, is a blessing. But the cabbage loopers, they can really eat down a plant super fast if you're not paying attention. I could cover these plants to hopefully keep bugs at bay. The wind is one reason that I'm not doing it, but also my personality is another reason that I'm not doing it. I am the type that if I put something in the fridge and I don't have like an immediate use for it, like I don't have a plan for it, I'm going to forget about it in the fridge. When it finally surfaces, it's going to look very different than when I put it in. And I don't want that to be the case for these brassicas. If I cover them, I'm a lot less likely to really pay attention to them. I don't know that I won't be closing in things like beetles and not managing things like weeds. And so I think for me, it's better to have them out in the open so I can see how they're doing. I can see what's going on more reliably than, you know, peeking underneath. And so yeah, that's the plan, is to spray them weekly to help keep the creepy crawlies from taking the harvest. You can see the little bits of damage that the bugs are doing. Now I've come through pretty reliably to come pick the bugs off, and so they're not really getting an upper hand, but that is what I expected this time of year, to have bug pressure be the big problem. These two beds here are purple of Sicily cauliflower, which historically do pretty well in the heat. And then this bed is a first time plant for me. This is the 9-star perennial cauliflower. It's also called the 9-star perennial broccoli. And in zones 7 and higher, it can actually live 5 or more years. And it will produce heads and little side shoots the entire time. So this plant is another reason that I didn't necessarily want to cover forever, for 5 years. You know, I wanted to find kind of a system and a method for maintaining this perennial cauliflower throughout the years that wasn't going to be a hassle. And so I think the weekly spraying of BT is how we're going to get this guy by too. We'll see. That is a harlequin bug. These are really the beetles that we're seeing most on things like brassicas. Someone had told me that there's another gardener that puts kaolin clay on their plants to help keep beetles away. Something about it masking the green color, and that confuses the beetles so that the beetles can't find their host plant. The one concern that I have about this, and I might not know what I'm talking about, but this is just my first thought, was if we're masking the green on the plants, is that also making the plant have a harder time photosynthesizing? I don't really know. If you guys know about kaolin clay for beetles and how plants can grow through that, let me know, because I'm in the research phase for that. I do have the kaolin clay and I do have a little puffer, but I haven't put it out here yet because I don't want to essentially suffocate the plants for sunlight. But back to the peaches. These are our white peach called the bonfire peach, and they are barely starting to soften up. We have a lot of peaches. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of harlequin bugs in there too. There are actually quite a lot of peaches on these little trees this year, so I'm excited about that. This is an experimental time for me with putting brassicas out this early. This is what locals say to do, and so I'm trying it. Hopefully everything works out well. Let me know how the timing works for fall brassicas where you are. To let me know where you're growing in your grow zone and all that, and maybe we can compare notes. Hopefully things are growing well wherever you are. I'll see you guys again soon.